I was listening to a screenwriters podcast today, and one of the screenwriters was talking about what they learned in when they first started as a writer in the writer's room. And one of the first lessons that this person learned was that the screenwriter, the writer that's always talking and never shuts up, is usually the one who's insecure about their role on the show, or their writing position. And I think this translates well to coaching as well, because I think a lot of times the motivation to say a lot, to give constant feedback to players, uh, you know, to get up and yell, call plays, so on and so forth, to be actively coaching uh, is fueled by some form of insecurity or a need to show one's power or worry about other people's perceptions of one's coaching, so on and so forth. I think it ends up being problematic because a lot of the negative behaviors that we see from coaches will tend to stem from these types of initial behaviors. Um, and so, I even when I was refereeing soccer this weekend, and a national assessor was talking to us, she made that exact point that if we're assessing, an assistant referee, and you choose, if you don't raise a flag for a potential offside call, they're not going to ignore that. They're going to acknowledge that is a decision that's being made. You've just chosen not to raise your flag. But it's still a decision. You're not only getting credit for the times where you actually raise your flag. And I think that's how we need to view coaching as well. When you make a decision not to yell at a player or not to criticize a mistake or even not to try to give positive feedback, but you allow the players to keep playing, maybe like I spoke about yesterday, next play, that's a decision. And that is coaching. Making those decisions of when to give feedback, when not to give feedback, when to give positive reinforcement, when not to give positive reinforcement, when to instruct, when to allow players to play. Those are all decisions, and ultimately, the coaches who can make those decisions the fastest and the best, and know each individual player and what each individual player needs, whether it's positive reinforcement or it's a little bit more you know kind of extrinsic motivation, or whether it's more instruction or more feedback. Knowing that and having that relationship with players is ultimately what tends to make a master coach, or a great coach. Is having a feel for the players and what they need at a specific time and how the different players need different things. And so for some players, silence is what they need, and that choice to not say anything, but simply to allow the players to play, should be acknowledged as a choice. That is coaching. It's just not, the same type of display that somebody who's up yelling and constantly giving feedback is doing. But both of them are coaching. They're just coaching in different ways. And as long as we tend to suggest that the one that stands up and yells and screams the most, that's coaching, and that's how we view coaching, we're going to continue down the road of having more and more poor behaviors out of coaches because it becomes accepted. Uh, so I was, again, the soccer tournament, I was talking to a coach, and he was talking about a couple of the current U.S. women's national team players that had played for him when they were younger, and specifically one of the players came to him when they were playing in a national championship game, and she said, "Coach, I'm going to take some shots, and when I shoot, if I miss, the first person I'm looking at is you, and I don't want you to put your head down. Just clap for me and we'll be okay." And they won 4-0 in the championship game. And this player then, subsequently went on and became a national team star. And so that's what, this player at 18 years old, that's what she said she needed. What she wanted wasn't, you know, yelling or cursing or even instructing. It was just, a little positive reinforcement, and not the negative displays of hanging the head, but just allow her to go on and make the next play. And so, again, that is a behavior, that is a decision. When that coach drops his head, that's a decision. That's a coaching behavior. And it's probably one that sends a negative message to players, even without having to get up and say anything. Whereas simply clapping or giving a thumbs up or something more positive, again, that's a coaching behavior. That's a decision by a coach. And it might not be as visible as a coach who stands up and stomps his feet and shakes his arms or yells really loud. But it's still coaching, and we need to understand that these types of behaviors are the ones that, in most cases, are the more appropriate behaviors for a coach in a game situation, as opposed to the stomping and the yelling and the screaming. And if we can encourage these behaviors, which tend to, be associated with more secure and more experienced coaches, and hopefully we can help the younger coaches and the less experienced and the less secure coaches to start to adopt these behaviors as they grow and as they learn to coach and as they mature, beyond the ranting and the raving. And that's what, coach development programs, hopefully that's what we're working towards, is taking away some of those insecurities that coaches have from coaching in front of people or being judged by other people or evaluated by other people, or simply self-insecurities over knowledge or relationships with players, whatever it may be. And the coach development or coach education helps to alleviate some of those insecurities, so that the coaches can worry more about what do the players need, rather than what performance do I need to put on to look like a coach in front of this audience.